Around 2000, Australia experienced a severe drought that lasted for about a decade. The water reserves were decreased to the low 20%. Everybody knew about it. It changed the public perception regarding water consumption. Australia's citizens were able to decrease their water consumption by 50% per capita.
First day!
First day!
First day! First day! I'm excited!
We went to Australia to research low-energy ways of treating urban runoff. We lose so much rainwater when it flows straight into the ocean after a big storm. This is water we can capture and use for other purposes like irrigation and toilet flushing. We're researching ways to capture this runoff right when it occurs and treat it on site. These are things like constructed wetlands and biofilters. They capture the water using natural processes to treat it. We were split into 4 teams: an ecology team, a pathogen team, a sensor data team, and a nutrient and chlorophyll team.
Okay, so what we're looking for in the data is basically water quality parameters that test basically how well these filtration systems are working in Australia. The reason we're going to Australia is because Australia has a well-established biofilters and wetlands that have been there for a long time, much longer than any in the United States. And so the results that we gain from those wetlands and biofilters are much more accurate and give us a better representation of what happens in the long run.
Yeah, there's just a ton of organic matter in here. A lot of it's decomposing. I'm thinking maybe at one time this is more vegetated, or it's possible that since it's winter this has died back and in the summer you'll see a lot of stuff growing back.
So biofilters and wetlands both work in the same way in that they use biofiltration media to improve the quality of water. The difference, however, is that biofilters have a vertical water flow, whereas wetlands, the water flows through it from inlet to outlet horizontally. So the vegetation in both wetlands and biofilters helps by reducing the flow of the water. This increases the residence time so that the water can be effectively treated.
One of the interesting things that we learned when we went around and visited all these wetlands were that they provide habitat for a lot of local bird species, and that's pretty important because a lot of the species that we saw or that we were told about are either endangered or they're endemic to Australia.
I think my expectations before I came in were a little bit naive because I expected a lot of these biofilters and treatment wetlands to be constructed in similar ways. And there are similarities, but there's a huge diversity in the way that these systems are constructed, and that offers some interesting challenges to researchers. I mean, they're designed differently out of necessity because they're dealing with different issues, different lay of the land, different types of construction. But it'll be interesting to see how we can try to tease out results from these systems that are so diverse.
So I suggest that we do a transect for the sensors right along the bridge there, because that'll be really easy.
Do you think we can also get to these two?
160. 139. That was 167.
167, it's actually really
139. 138.
38.
And 141.
The Western Treatment Plant story began in about 1897 when we first received sewage here. We've got, as you can see, a massive parcel of land set aside for us.
What I really liked about Australia's approach to treating their wastewater is that they built a relationship of trust.
We also specifically are very interested on how Australians were able to make it so that the public was way more interested, and how they made it seem like it was a cool and hipster thing to install rainwater tanks and paint on them and express themselves with these rainwater tanks. It was almost as if you didn't have a rainwater tank on the block, then you were kind of the outcast.
My favorite part of working in the field has to be the net towing and the macro invertebrate counts. I love counting the chironomids, the flies, larvae in there, the shrimps. They're all fascinating to me.
We analyzed the water quality parameters we measured in Australia to look for any trends or correlations and determine the efficiency and health of the biofilters and wetlands we sampled.
A really good sign that this is a real physical phenomenon. It might not be an interesting phenomenon. So for example, Andrew's theory is that what happens is that it's just a little shallower over around M5.
Okay, so what we plan to do with the data is kind of take a look at these characteristics of biofilters and wetlands, which tell us how healthy these systems are and down the road since they have been well established. And we'll take this data and kind of translate it to what it means in the United States and see what was done correctly and what wasn't done correctly and kind of avoid those mistakes and maybe improve on other aspects of biofilters and wetlands that worked in Australia.
I did expect to do a lot of work, but I also expect it to be very fulfilling and inspiring, which it has been so far. It's taught me a lot about what I need to do to improve as a person and as a researcher. So I really am learning a lot from this experience.
Core samples that we took from the river, not river, but the wetland, and they are from different locations.
To be able to take everything you learn, all the theoretical stuff you learn in school, and be able to look at practical applications to the real world is very helpful to the learning experience and figuring out what you want to do through career and see if you actually want to do this in the future.
Over here, we're filtering all of our water samples. So we have our inlet midway through the pond and outlet.
Another important goal of our program is to create lasting partnerships with researchers and organizations such as the University of Melbourne, Monash University, and Melbourne Water.
Before we left, I met an Australian woman in California who told me that whenever she sees sprinklers here watering the concrete, she has mild panic attacks and she thinks to herself, oh my God, what are they doing? These people should be in jail, someone needs to stop that. And that's the general consensus of people in Australia. Because of the millennium drought, they've been really pushed towards water conservation. We're trying to instill that same mindset in Californians and hopefully all of America.
This program has been valuable to us not only because of the research, but also as a cultural exchange. We all were able to try Vegemite, pet koalas, and feed kangaroos. So it was definitely an experience we'll never forget.
If you're thinking about being part of this program, I strongly recommend it to you. It's an excellent opportunity not only to learn about the multidisciplinary nature of environmental science and engineering, but it's also a great opportunity for you to make new friends and learn a little bit about Australia and how nice it is here.